The list goes on.
Okay. Can you do roll call?
Mr. Evans,
Here.
Silva,
Here?
Ms. Burke.
Here.
Okay.
Talking about Paul.
Paul.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Winterhalter.
Mr. Winterhalter is here. Thank you very much.
Oh, we'll start with a brief moment of silence, and then we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do we have any comments on the agenda by any of the members?
Nope.
Then we had minutes from the May 27 meeting, like a long time ago. Anybody have any comments?
Looked good to me.
We have a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second,
Second.
all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
The minutes are approved. We have one applicant. I'm just I want to ask this kind of going forward. Did you meet with the township members before submitting?
No, I spoke with Mr. Porter, and I believe the applicant and somebody in township subdivision.
No. Oh, no, I just, sometimes people come in and they have a meeting and they discuss 10 things, and then the plan we have has none of them. So that's what I'm trying to, see.
Well, he did that several years ago.
So, I understand you're here to present, or how about it?
Good evening. My name is Jim Gate. I work for Stantec. That name might sound familiar to you. I'm here today to present a 27-lot subdivision off of Wayland Avenue on behalf of Mr. Nolan. I guess I should, first of all, thank you for having me here. As I understand, I'm the only one on the agenda, so yeah, probably the only reason why you guys came into that. So I do appreciate that, not to mention the fact it's a pretty hot night. So I was wondering if I could, if you could hit that first. There you go. While it's waiting, I don't know if you remember, but I used to be on the board as the engineer. And actually a little more background in that, but back in the 80s and 90s, I worked for the engineer who was the engineer for Newtown Township. So I got a lot of history in the township. Okay, what we're looking at is here, we're looking at a continuous 48 acre property owned by Mr. Nolan that's off of Wayland Avenue. At the bottom of the screen, you can see that's Hunt Valley Circle. And to the right on the screen, the lots that are not part of the subdivision, they're from Hunt Valley Circle. Is that right? Hunt Valley Circle? Yes. We're planning on doing a 27-lot subdivision under the R1 zoning district, 60,000 square foot minimum acres lots. It's a by right use. We are showing approximately 4,000 linear feet of new road with 2 entrances onto Wayland Avenue and a cul-de-sac coming off the one, what we're calling right now is Road B at the bottom. This is going to be served by public water and by public sewer. The sewer we are proposing is going to be individual grinder pumps for each lot with a low pressure sewer system that's going to connect to the existing sewer at Echo Valley Lane. It's Can't see it on that sheet, but it's right off the street on Echo Valley Lane. The stormwater management, I know everyone talks about stormwater management. We try to spread the stormwater management out along the site as much as possible. We didn't want to try to get it all into one spot and try to disperse it and infiltrate it. So what we have is, we have the 3 basins. Did you go down a couple more, please?
Do you know what page it is?
No, it's sheet 7, I believe. If you just keep scrolling down, I'll tell you.
You can look at C-131 perhaps.
I brought with me a laser, but apparently it doesn't work on these screens, I was told. So. Yeah, that's fine. Those two sheets right there will be fine. We have 3 basins. The ones on the right-hand side of the subdivision, there's a large basin there, and then there's another basin a little bit further down into the corner. And then if you go up one sheet, there's an additional basin over in the lower left-hand corner next to Wayland Road. There's also another lot associated with that subdivision on there, but we couldn't fit it on that particular sheet, so it's on a match page. So there's a basin, and right below that, there's a lot. There's a new house proposed on lot 27. In addition to the basins, what we're proposing is we're proposing roadway swales along all of the roads. And in the roadway swales, we're proposing infiltration trenches. With the idea being, instead of throwing all the water down into the basins and trying to control them, we let the water go into the roadside swales. In there is a storm sewer system. And at strategically placed low spots, places with good soil, we put underground trenches, anywhere from 300 to 100 feet long, 10 foot wide, 3 feet deep. The idea being is that as the water comes down from the lots, they go into the road, they go into the swale. They travel through grass-lined swales, which is kind of what you want. It's a pollution reducer, and it's also it slows down the velocity of it. And then they go into these underground basins or under infiltration basins. That'll take some of the water, not all the water, some of the water. And when it fills up to a certain volume, then the pipe's right there, continues onto the pipe, and then comes down through the basin. So what we're anticipating is a significant amount of stormwater management before all of the stormwater hits the 3 basins. In addition to that, each house is going to have their own individual infiltration bed that's going to take care of the increase in impervious for the 100-year storm. Like I said, we kind of designed this knowing that we have steep slopes on the right-hand side of the property, and we don't want a lot of stormwater going down through there. And we have additional houses along there, so this property is kind of surrounded by a lot of houses. So we don't want to dump in front of a lot of houses. There are a lot of things to overcome the stormwater, but I think we used a kind of a unique method to kind of disperse it, so it doesn't kind of migrate to one area and then kind of try to control an over amount of water and discharge it to an additional or adjacent storm sewer.
Is the way you're intending to set it up more costly than the alternative?
I personally think it is, because instead of having, larger beds, you're now putting in, I mean, technically we have 3 beds. So you might end up having 3 beds and like 4 underground infiltration beds. But with this, we're having 11 roadside swales, 2 beds, and then the 3 basins. So we're kind of dispersing it. Do I think it's more expensive? I personally would think it is, but the way the market's going right now, I couldn't tell you how much any kind of stormwater is going to cost you right now, other than everything's expensive at this point.
And what volume of water would go in the swales versus the basins? Does it add another 50% or?
What we try to do is we try to get the difference in two-year storms. So basically your average, I'd be careful about saying this, but your average summer storm that comes in, you get an inch of rain, that should hold just about everything in there, in the basins themselves, in the infiltration beds. And then, like I said, the other thing that I think not enough developers and engineers count on is grass swales. Not so much to like absorb the water, but to kind of slow it down and to treat the pollutants It's one of the major things you do, but for some reason, everyone likes to throw things, a road into a curb, have it go into a pipe, and then all of the storm water is directed into the pipe and going down to the basin. This way, at least we intercept some of the water before it gets all the way down to the basin.
So if the basins will hold a 1-inch storm, do the swales give you another inch?
Yeah, I would say, well, actually, the swales themselves hold, I believe, a 25-year storm. They're designed to hold a 25-year storm. Now, they're swales, so that they'll
It's
carry
moving
the
water, right?
Yes, yes. But the idea is by ordinance, we have to reduce the increase in the 2-year storm. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to intercept as much of that and put that in those infiltration trenches along the side of the road.
When you design the stormwater system, the basins first, for the entire series of storms that the ordinance requires. If you did not have the swales with the infiltration trenches you have in them, would the basins themselves be sufficient? And and then the swales are in addition to this, or the swales are calculated as a part of addressing the storm, the series of storms?
Right, there's two ways of looking at it. What we did for the infiltration in the trenches is all about not runoff, but water quality and reducing the volume. That's the big thing. If you reduce the volume, so I don't think I've done the calculations to see if we've taken them out. Would the basins be able to handle everything? Because that would.
Now, what I'm looking at, I understand, and we all understand what the requirements currently are. Like what we talked about a little bit before. I'm looking a little bit ahead. If in 5-10 years, the system will be sufficient. So,
Like, I think if our guidance or zoning says X, you need to be able to handle the 2-inch rainstorm, but yours has capacity of 4 inches. Like, are you over our threshold of requirement, or did you just meet it?
I think we're over on most of the smaller storms, the 2, the 5, the 10, the 25. I think the 100, I think we're almost at it. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. And the other thing I point out is that half of this site is in a high quality watershed. And it's the Crum Creek, I think, B, which requires us to take the 10 down to the 5, as opposed to the other ones where basically we take the 2 down to the 1 and then straight across the board, the 5 to 5, 10 to 10.
What is 2 to 1, 5 to 5?
It's the volume of a 10-year storm, pre-development. Okay, we can't let anything more than that come out on the 10-year storm. In the higher quality watershed, it basically says for the 10-year storm, you can't let out any more than a 2-year storm. So it basically says you have
that's
to hold
the rate,
more.
not the volume.
That's the rate. Yes, it is. Because there is no volume. The volume requirements we're trying to reduce is through the roadside swales and the other basins. Yeah, but that is a.
So I think we both asked the same question. If your design is a little bit over the current requirements, I don't think we can demand that you do that. We are asking if your calculation is beyond what is currently required as far as reducing flow rates.
Like I said, I'm pretty.
How do we get a clear answer to that?
How do you get a clear answer to that?
Yeah.
Have the engineer who actually did the calculations sitting down beside me, which was not me.
Yes.
I am the project manager.
I wasn't being smart. I was.
No, I understand.
Like, yeah.
I understand. And listen, that's something that Dave in McCombie's office can confirm once we get deeper into the stormwater management.
So, Shimon, to your point there, if it's better than what we're asking,
Anything
we shouldn't necessarily. I'm saying, like, if he met the code requirement,
that is correct.
right? That's one issue. The other issue is how do we ask for more because of the capacity of incoming changes to the water flow.
it would be good to have something in addition, something.
I
better.
agree. I understand. I
That's all
live
we
right
can
in
say at
Echo
this
Valley.
point.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So one of the questions I would just ask, currently you have 3 basins that you're installing. Are all 3 basins meant to be grass mowed basins, or are you looking at anything that has plantings that would be, that when the water got there, there would be some plantings that would be water tolerant, and not only just water tolerant, but water drinking, basically, plantings that would help even within the basins as the basins fill and start to empty, that could potentially hold water in that location longer and used more as part of that.
We're proposing just grass at this point, but I don't think it's much to ask to take the bottom of the basin and put in more native plants or something that can hold it. But, the only bad thing about that is
Gotta
what it
maintain
is,
it.
they're, you get mosquitoes, you get issues like that. Me personally, I think the mosquito issue is a little overblown. I'd rather go for the storm water. But I don't think from my perspective as a designer, I don't think putting native plants in the bottom of the basin is going to be a major impact from a cost perspective. I mean, whether it's grass or it's meadow or it's some other kind of native plant, I don't think it's going to be that significant a cost. And I don't think my client would object to that.
I just think it's something to consider, Mike. The AAC has not given us a review back, but I anticipate that that'll be one of the things that they're requesting as part of that for the stormwater management.
If I may, I may be asking the same question as Mr. Evans, and Mr. Guy, but the on-lot seepage beds, are they in addition to, in order to meet the capacity of the basins, are they, does it all have to work together?
It does all work together.
So it's not, it's the on-lot basins are not in addition to meeting the capacity solely with the basins?
No, it's with that.
So everything works
Yes.
collectively together to meet the ordinance?
Yes, the thing about the beds, which is not what we do for the infiltration trenches, because they take more of a volume, is the beds for each individual lot takes all the increase in the 100-year storm. So if you will, you can take, where the house is, take that out, and there's a big hole, and there's no storm water being taken from that particular house. That is our goal. And that way, things like, and this is what I thought, you get roof drains. Roof drains are intensive, and they go down a driveway, and all of a sudden they meet the curb of a road, and that's when, all of a sudden your curb is six inches high of water, and they're all flowing down. And next thing you know, they hit an inlet, and you start with an 18-inch pipe on that inlet, and then you're 20 inlets down the road, and next thing you know, it's a 36 inch diameter pipe. And that 36-inch diameter pipe is dumping into your basin. So it's just like one big, shot of storm water. There's nothing interrupting it. And that was the kind of what we were trying to do here. You take the house out, boom, you interrupt the flows from the house. You take the water going into the roads, instead of shoving them right into an inlet and a pipe, you intercept it. You get the grass swell, you slow it down. You get the infiltration basins, you take some of them down. So that's kind of intent, because you guys were talking about storm sewer before the meeting started. It's my contention, and it's just mine, but I've been doing this for 35 years. It's when you try to shove everything to a basin, you're just gathering steam on the velocity of the basin, and all of a sudden you're hit with a tidal wave. And to me, it's like, why don't you just cut it up? Why don't you start cutting up a little piece at a time and kind of reduce it, velocity dissipators, if you will, volume reducers, if you will, before you get to the main stormwater control facilities. I just think it makes a lot more sense that way. But, I'm one of 1,000 voices in stormwater management.
I get the concept. It would, different sections of the system slow it down,
Yes.
but it also holds more water. So does it hold more water on its way to the basin?
Yes, it does.
Right. I get it. I get
So
it.
I think we have a total of, for the infiltration basins, we got 54,000.
That's why they asked me a question earlier after you explained that. I said, that sounds like it's got to be more expensive than the standard system.
Well,
Because you're putting in all these extra,
but all we're really doing, all we're really doing, we have to put inlet pipe. We have to do that, no matter what we do. So all we're doing is putting in a 10-inch or a 10-foot wide, 3-foot deep stone trench. And we cut holes in the pipe and it comes in and it bleeds into the infiltration. So yes, is it more expensive? But it's not like some of the big the basins or the underground beds where you got to put the little milk cartons in there. That that's a new stormwater technology, but it's really expensive. And we're not putting in used 36-inch CMP pipes that connect to another like manhole, if you will, and that manhole itself is worth it costs you like $10,000. I mean, it's simplistic. You got a pipe that's running, it's going to carry the water. You drop some holes on it, let that water as much as you can go into these infiltration beds. When the infiltration bed fills at the top, then you got your regular old water coming back down, but you've eliminated 54,000 cubic feet roughly volume of the entire storm from the system.
So I kind of get it, right? Each property, how the water flows into these various entities on its way to the basin. Where is the basin? Where is the central basin located?
Well, there's actually 3 of them.
Where are they located?
If you go one down, there's 2 of them right there. The long one up at the far right, that's basin 3, and then the
That's-
smaller one.
You
That's
can
one
use your
basin.
laser here.
What's that?
You can use your laser on the screen.
Oh, you can?
It won't work on the LED.
No?
Yeah, that's what I was told.
So is this a
Yeah, it
basin
kind of disappeared.
right
All
here?
right.
Yes, that is a basin.
All right, this is Echo Valley.
Yes, it is. The house is on Echo Valley.
This down here is
The house is on Hunt Valley.
here, not here.
No, that's part of our subdivision.
That's part of your subdivision.
Yes.
This is Hunt
Yes.
Valley.
Yes.
So there's a big section on the backside of Hunt Valley and Echo Valley where it collects.
Yes.
There's a street here, right here, right? It used to have a name. For some reason, it went away. I think that was because of busing reasons, because if it had a name, they had to pick it up at the intersection. You know about that, Steve?
I did not.
Right, my kid got screwed out of getting picked up at the bus. Just a little side story. So, but there's a huge section there where we fell victim to it up on Echo Valley with the Toll Brothers property. So where's all that water going? Because Toll Brothers told us it was good, but it flowed into the streams, and then the streams are like literally blowing out driveways. Like, so where's the basin go? How's that managed? Where's it go after that? If it overflows, where's it gonna go?
Basin, one half of this site collects to this basin, and it comes down in here into a level spreader, and your stream is right down in here. Okay. The other thing about it, we were putting a large infiltration bed in the cul-de-sac, so we can take out as much volume as possible. Second one is right here.
Under the cul-de-sac? you mean?
Under the cul-de-sac, yes. Yes. We actually debated on whether to put a little bit more infiltration beds under the roads, but that gets real tricky with utilities, because utilities got to stay at the bed of the road. So that's why we decided to go on the outside in swales. And then this one, which captures about this much drainage area, comes into here, and then goes down, and they both combine into here, to that area. And Dave was talking about this with me before the meeting, how there's a concern about flow coming into here and this stream. So we're gonna take another look at that.
Yeah.
But you also have infiltration in 3, you also have infiltration in 2. But that's where the water, the problem is, it's the contours of this ground says everything on this side goes to right here.
Right.
And that I can't, Mr. Newton took care of that with long graph.
Yeah.
I can't do anything about that.
No, I understand that. Therein lies our concern on the planning commission, is that we want to make sure that before approving anything or moving forward with anything, that we properly take care of any resident issues that might arise from it.
Can you explain the level spreader? I think that's important.
Yeah, a
Because
level,
I think the concern is overflow,
right.
and that's going to happen beyond the 100-year storm.
A level spreader, normally when you have a discharge coming out of the basin, it's a pipe. Right, and it's a big pipe with an end wall section, and they put a lot of rip wrap there, and it's supposed to all slow it down. And sometimes it works, but in intensive storms, and if it's a really big basin, you're still gonna have a lot of water there. So what you do is you take a pipe down, and then you put it into a T, and then you put a long pipe. In this case, I believe that's close to 200 feet long, maybe even a little more than that. So instead of the water coming rushing out in a point of interest, one shot, it gets spread along a pipe in a trench. So it starts trickling out over a 100-foot long area.
Perforated pipe.
Perforated pipe, yes, yes. And they actually, and today they actually put the problem all with that was, how do you get something that's 200 feet long level? Right, so we actually now put a concrete curve in front of it. So as all the water builds out, it's a level curve and all the water comes out at the same elevation, which means it spreads out pretty well. So you'll reduce, the thing about discharge is it's the velocity. Once it comes out, it erodes streams and everything like this. The intent of the level spreader is to take the velocity and reduce it down to non-erosive velocity, somewhere in the neighborhood of like 2 to 3 feet per second, as opposed to you could get 12 to 14 feet per second coming out of a big pipe and you'll start carving out the soil.
How far is the stream from the level spreader?
It's funny, it's another thing that Dave and I were talking about today. He asked me if I could pull back a little bit further. So the one edge is almost right on the stream, the northern edge of that thing. So Dave and I talked about, and we're going to try to push it back a little further.
Actually, what I asked is the opposite question, right? So that it will not be too far.
So the concern is if you're 150 to 300 feet, you can get reconcentration of the spread out water. There's also requirement for repairing buffer along that stream. So there's 50 foot from the stream bank into the site that currently the way it's proposed has the level spreader extending into that. So as Jim mentioned, that's sort of what we discussed, maybe being able to add a little bit, but trying to keep it with the idea that the level spreader is going to function to level and spread the water out.
So that is in order to reduce the potential for erosion. I can read from here. How deep are these two basins?
You're coming
Are
up with some
these
really great questions.
1 foot or 2 foot contours?
I'm sorry, they, I believe, are 2 foot contours.
So just a question, I'm still concerned about the rate and the volume. So they are quite deep. So if you do that, you will not get any credit from DEP. Realize that. I'm asking whether underneath the bottom, if you put them in soil and then maybe a layer of crushed stone just to hold a little more water there and infiltrate it slowly. By that, you can still add another reduction in both rate and volume.
I do know that we looked at amended soils in there. The problem is we don't want to get too deep, and it's steep slope. So there's a lot of competing issues here. We can't go too deep, because if we go too deep, then we don't know what we're going to hit when we add a steep slope down. There could be rocks down there, and then we get.
If you hit rock, or probably you hit the groundwater because it's so close to.
That's another possibility. But like I said, I don't think. I mean, right now the footprint is about as locked as it could be. We could tweak it here and there. So, but if you're asking, can we take 2 feet out and put amended soils in there to gain a little bit of volume, if you will? I don't think that's an unreasonable thing to request.
You're just digging a little deeper.
You just dig in a little deeper, putting in better soil, and in some cases, putting in the native plants or something like that to try to make it kind of hold the water a little bit longer
Exactly,
before it goes out.
that's a point.
A separate, I don't see the roof seepage bed on every lot. Is that just,
If it is, then as my CAD guy says, it was there a moment ago. I don't know what happened to it, but the intent is that we have it.
and then on the sanitary sewer, does the easement through the 2 lots on Echo Valley, does that exist?
It does exist. You have, and Dave probably explained this a lot better than I can, but there's an existing force main that goes up along that property and down towards Echo Valley, Echo Valley, right? Right. And what we're doing is we're going to ask the township if we could use that easement to put our sewer pipe in. Now, this is a low pressure sewer system.
So that's up at Echo Valley or going through Rhodes and Roach or Reek? It's hard to read it. There's 2 lots you're cutting through.
Roads would be one of them.
Yeah, it's the roads on this side. I don't know. I can't read that.
Where are you?
I'm on page C134. probably the best vision.
Yeah, right there, there's another detail.
Yeah, right there, the left.
Rish, oh, yeah, that's the Rishes.
Yeah, so it looks like, your easement is basically on both lots.
It's not our easement. We're, like I said, it's an easement that's already been established for utilities. I think water ends and the force main that you guys just put in. We're intending to piggyback into that easement with permission. And the thing you gotta remember, it's a low pressure sewer system. I believe the force main in this, at this spot is like 2 inches or 2.5 inches diameter. That's it.
So
Yeah,
you're digging
it's-
through their property?
Or you're just gonna tunnel under like they put the Verizon into our,
Most people like to do the directional drilling these days. They find it to be cheaper. So to me, it would be up to the contractor. How
is that the one where you go underneath? Yeah.
Have they been notified?
No, they have not. That's kind of on the list of, this is the initial and we're like,
Yeah, yeah.
okay. Because here's the thing, when it comes to the sanitary sewer, we have to get buy-in from the township and the sewer authority. Saying this is the type we want, this is the connection point, if you will. That's probably more critical is the connection point. And we've been working with David McCombie's office to try to find the best place to connect.
So Jim, kind of the segue into the methodology for sewage disposal, providing grinder pumps and low pressure sewer in lieu of doing a gravity system and a pump station. Was that considered? I know at one point in the past, there was a cluster development that showed a pump station and that's no longer in play. Why is the change?
I am also the engineering consulting for Sewer Authority, Southwest Sewer Authority. And what I have seen over the last couple of years is the grinder pump low pressure system is, first of all, it's cheaper, but more important in our case, if we had to build sewer here, it would have to be a pump station. And the pump station is expensive. It has a lot of operation and maintenance. We'd have to dedicate that to the township. Or see, townships don't even want pump stations. And this is very common. If you go to Middletown Township, I would say that half of the sewer connections over the past 10 years have been through grinder pumps. It's just a little tiny pump. It's probably like, there's a detail. Can you go down?
And that's as a result of topography issues?
Yes. I mean, this is a rolling site.
Because nobody's gonna say they prefer a grinder pump over just a
Gravity, no, gravity.
Yeah.
There's no way we could serve the site without a pump station or the grinder pumps.
Understood.
Would a pump station look like the one at the end of Newtown Woods?
Or
It's
the
not
one
used
by,
anymore?
Well, they
Yeah,
just
they
built
went
one
through
at
to
the end of
townhouse right by my
Echo
house.
Valley, Plum Creek.
At the end of Newtown
I don't know
Woods.
how big this one would have to be because it's only serving.
It will only serve about 6,000, a little over 6,000 gallons per day.
So, I mean, it
It'd
could,
be-
we have some that are really small. And I don't know, I mean, I would assume it could be almost like Hickory's.
Probably, yeah.
So it would be something that, it would be probably about the size of a 10 by 10 square
Exactly.
that you would see. And there wouldn't necessarily be a building. It could all be, most of it underground and just a couple of things up top that you would.
They're
see.
not that big.
Yeah, that's like the one at the university.
I guess the consideration or the question that planning commission and the authority would probably likely have would be, is there potential for development in the future? Would it make sense to serve that with a smaller grinder pump or a smaller pump station versus grinder pumps throughout the entire?
I do not know what Mr. Nolan owns the only open tracks in that area at this point. I do not know what his intention is. I have been associated with this track for the past 10, 15 years. It's going, at one point we had, because there's the one track and then there's his property and there's the other track on the other side. At one point, there were like single family houses on 3 acre sites. And then we came back and we did, cluster with smaller town or smaller houses. I do not know. All I know is my client contacted me and said, Jim, what can we do on this lot that's a by right use? No conditional uses, nothing like that. What can we do? And then he got Dennis Glacken's office to kind of do a little sketch, and then he handed that over to me and said, Jim, what can you do with this?
Here we are.
Here we are.
But the difference with the pump station is, of course, some entity should be established to maintain and operate.
Yeah.
Correct.
And I know DEP does not like private pump stations. If we introduce a pump station, they would try like heck to get us to make you guys take it over.
Municipal authority at least, right?
Yes,
Um,
yes.
So in that, you brought that up, and I know it's going to come up somewhere along the line, going from the cluster back to this approach. And I believe the county letter recommended really looking at that option of having it as a cluster. Is there openness from Mr. Nolan to consider doing it as a cluster? I think that's probably the township's preference. I don't want to speak for the board. I don't want to speak for the planning commission, but I know that, it's been a part of what we're looking at as a zoning rewrite. It's part of what we're looking at for going forward. So I have to assume that it's at least something that we would want to understand why would we go away from the cluster to this? Knowing, yes, I understand that right now it's a conditional use to do the cluster, but I think, and like I said, I can't speak for the board, but I think there's a lot of support to push it as a cluster, keeping the open space as much as possible.
As far as I know, when this first came up, if he wanted to develop this piece of ground as the cluster, he would have said, hey, Jim, let's just put this back into play. But he didn't. He came to me and said, Jim, I want to see what a by right plan would look like and what can we do with that.
Was the motivation for the by right plan so as to not have to deal with a lot of haggling? Or was, if I think maybe, and this is my words, not the townships or anybody else, hey, look, it's conditional use on cluster, but we'd really like to get that through if we could, and we'd make it work. Is the motivation there? I just don't feel like haggling with anyone.
I'm not in a position to speak for Mr. Nolan. I'm sorry. And he was,
Yeah.
he's out of town. And we decided that we didn't want to cancel this because he's not going to be here. We need to get this in front of the township. So as far as I know is, he just said, Jim, I want to develop this as a by right use.
Do you remember how many lots he got in the cluster concept of?
I think it was,
More than this.
oh yeah, much more than this.
Yeah.
I thought it was like 45 and 30 something for a combined like 70. Because remember, he did the cluster on both properties. He didn't
Just on this part.
I think this was the smaller of the two.
Yeah, maybe
if I remember.
35, 37, something.
I think that's right.
If he's inclined to entertain the concept of rethinking the cluster development, we'd love to participate in that conversation with him.
I will make a note of that.
Yeah, my sense is that the market would rather those as well.
That's what I was surprised
Yeah.
that this was coming in, because the market is driving to cluster.
Right.
But, I think if there's an understanding of what the township wants, and if there's a way to get through it reasonably smoothly, maybe he'd be agreeable to that. I don't know. I had one other question on the water drainage. And I'm not an engineer, so I don't really, sorry, I'm taking all your time.
No, I wasn't going to take that time.
So Toll Brothers, right? And you were saying some of the system is shut down and Lissitor.
They're still building and part of the development. Yes.
Right. So a lot of that water in that development is flowing into certain areas and is just crushing the streams. And there's way too much water coming into the streams, and the streams are blowing out into Echo Valley. Back on, I forget the name of that little side street, second right, you make the McConaughey house right around there, but that, it'll cover over Echo Valley Lane on occasion. So that's a lot of open space that was consumed, and the water isn't properly moving, obviously, out of the development. Where are the streams? Because I live on the backside of Echo Valley, and you're saying there's a stream there. Is there really one there? I'm
No.
actually thinking, where would the water actually go?
It's a tributary. It's a tributary. It's a small tributary. I'm not even too sure it runs wet the entire time. I'm just not sure. I don't know if you know it runs.
You could step across.
And that's on the back side of Echo Valley
So
and this
across-
property?
Across from where you live on Echo Valley Lane, that little stub street that goes down.
Yeah.
If you walk to the bottom of that,
Yeah,
we did a stream crossing there with the force main that runs from the Hunt Valley community
yes.
through the lime cooler property, through the easement that Mr. Gator referenced.
I'm aware of that one.
And we tied in on Echo Valley Lane. So that stream, that's the stream that traverses the.
That's the one,
southerly
that's the
portion of
one.
site. Yep.
All right, that's the one, then, so that theoretically, if it weren't done right, and I'm not saying you're not, that's where that water could potentially like
Well, I
swale.
won't say that, but I will say that's the direction that.
I'm saying if it weren't, and I'm not saying you are,
Yes,
I'm
no,
just
I
saying that, I thought you were referencing another stream along the
that's-
back side of.
yeah. And that's where it goes now currently. So the idea and the requirement in the stormwater regulations is to, one, reduce the rate of runoff to that point, which
Yeah.
according to their drainage summary, they've done that.
Yeah, yep,
So they reduced the 2 to the 1 year, so it's the 2-year post rate to the 1-year pre-developed rate. So it's looking at the site as if it was all meadow, pre-developed. You take a 1-year storm, which is like an inch of rain,
yeah,
and you figure out what that rate of runoff is. And you have to take that 2-year post-development, all the impervious coverage, everything has the accelerated runoff, and reduce that down to below what's coming off pre-development as a meadow, not as a farm. So it's even more conservative. So theoretically,
okay,
and then doing the 2 to the 1, so you know, is a method to alleviate stream bank erosion. So by knocking that peak down from the 2 to the 1-year storm, that's what townships in their Act 167 ordinances that they've adopted to alleviate the stream bank erosion issues. The volume is a whole separate ballgame. That's
yeah,
you know, that's, as Jim mentioned, we handle that with the difference in the 2-year storm. And even some of the basins that they're designing, they're gonna handle all of the 100-year volume from the houses,
okay,
just taking that completely out of the equation. So if, and it's a big if the stormwater systems are designed, and they operate and are maintained properly, it should not be a problem. But the operation and maintenance of stormwater facilities, as you probably are aware, throughout municipalities, private properties, or HOAs that have to maintain those basins on a regular basis, and can be challenging. It can be neglected.
got it.
I have a question, Mr. Gates. In the calculation that you use to get to the total impervious, did you use it for the total of the zoning district? So R1 allows maximum impervious coverage of a lot of 30%. Did you use that calculation, or did you use some other more as-built type calculation?
What we use is, we used for each, well, the roads are the roads, you know, it's a 24-foot
Right, the roads
road, the roads are the roads. And for the houses, I think the footprint came out to be like about 35,000 or 3,500 square feet, which is roughly to the adjacent single-family homes up the street on, was that Bridle Lane, I believe?
Like the White Horse
The
Development.
White Horse
Horse.
Development, yes. And the good
So
thing.
it wouldn't be to the maximum build out of the lot of each lot.
No, but the one thing that is, in my opinion, the advantage of having the on-site is if someone comes up and says, okay, you know, I was approved for a 3,500 square foot building, I want to put a 5,000, and by you know, impervious coverage they're allowed to, then guess what? That bed that you designed now has to get bigger because you still have to comply with meeting the 100%, 100-year storm.
That's kind of what I was going for, because I look at after the house is built, right? And I
Stacks,
yeah,
pools, all
I'd
that.
like to know, I always like to know how an individual property owner is going to handle future development on their home.
Right, people add sheds, exercise on the
Yeah.
driveways.
Patios, additions.
A good stormwater ordinance would catch them, and every time they come in for a permit, you say, okay, you're increasing your impervious, and you have to increase your stormwater, online stormwater. And I think talking to G and Eileen and I know you guys try to do that.
Anything else? Public comment? You think? So you'll be back. So I want to kind of something too, for the year. Can you get Mr. Nolan to give us a 30-day extension? And we don't always need it, but we had one scenario where we did not get it, and then we kind of got boxed in. So to the extent this rolls week to week, month to month rather.
Once again, Mr. Nolan, you know,
I understand. If you could just
I
ask.
can influence certain things, but I can't tell him what to do because.
If you could just ask.
Okay, yeah, well, that's not, and as far as I remember, every other time I was here representing Jim, Mr. Nolan's interest, I don't think he objected to.
No, and it's not a reflection on him. It was another applicant that I sort of took some personal responsibility because I kind of felt like I snoozed on it. So if I just ask for it every time, I have less chance of that.
The other thing I want to point out is we're not looking for a combined preliminary final. We want to take this step. We hear the stormwater issues, and I know that we're gonna, you know, Dave and our offices are gonna be talking about stormwater. I've heard you guys talk about before the meeting and during the meeting. So I know I gotta conquer that one. So all we're shooting for is preliminary. So once we get that preliminary down, saying, okay, this is a good design, then we go for the final, we can go for like the MPDS permit and all the other state permits and stuff like that. But we want to lock in the design before we get into anything close to final.
That's fine. I'm just trying to get things
And
straight.
just so the planning commission's aware, with the application coming in on July 27th and the planning commission's date of the meeting tonight of the 26th of August, that 90-day requirement for action on the plan is out until November 24th. So there's some time. The applicant will likely be back in before the planning commission September and or October, depending on how things go. But it's completely up to the planning commission, your purview to request any extension.
Ask me, just shoot us an email. We know where we are. Any other comments from planners? Planning commission?
Ask Paul.
Paul,
All good. So,
do we have a motion to close?
Motion to close.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks for coming.
I would just mention to the planning commission, this can be off the record, but the state legislature passed a guideline. I mentioned it, thank you. I mentioned
Take
it
care.
to Curtis at a meeting that we had, but agenda items going forward after